So I think I'm going to do a couple of things. One, give you an overview. Quiz making is a little bit different in the new Moodle, so even if you have been making quizzes, the sort of new interface might throw you a little bit. So I'll kind of go over that. And I put this at the top, sort of quiz administration in new Moodle. The biggest change is that the administration settings, when you click on a quiz, as I will do if you're a teacher, the quiz administration settings are now over here on the side. So edit settings, edit quiz. Edit settings is the sort of settings that control when students see the quiz, what it looks like, how it behaves. Edit quiz is where you actually put the questions in and move them around. Okay. Preview is to look at your quiz and see how it will look for students. And then results, once students take a quiz, is to see how they've done. Okay. New in Moodle, in the new Moodle, is this, yeah?
How come quiz administration, how come I don't see, I'm not on Learn here, I'm on my course. Do I have to generate a quiz first before
Yes.
it comes up?
I've clicked on this quiz called Mineralogy Quiz Demo. Okay. Now you should all be enrolled. Yep, I see everybody. So you should all be students, which means you'll see something a little bit different than what I see. When you click on the quiz, you'll actually be able to take the quiz. So that's, I think, the biggest difference. The other big feature in new Moodle, it used to be that if you wanted to give a student an extension, for example, there was no way to do that other than creating a, closing the quiz, creating a password, right? It was a big rigmarole. Now, yay. I mean, I don't know how you guys are probably maybe frustrated because the interface is all new, but I've been waiting in the wings, like jumping up and down for the move to this new version, because it's got a lot of really great quiz features, including group overrides and user overrides. So user overrides, if you want to give a particular person, say Doug, I know needs to have more time. Let's say the time limit for this was, normally 10 minutes, but he's a student that the access services says I need to give double time or something. I could simply increase the time for him to 20 minutes and save it. And then once you've set those up, when you click on the user overrides, it'll give you a list of all the ones that you've set up for different quizzes. And I think if you set up a quiz and copy it, those overrides are copied to the next quiz. If you already have existing quizzes that you're moving over, you might have to go and manually do the override in every single one, unfortunately.
The override is usually for an individual student.
Right, right. But you can do it for a group if you want to, move students and say, okay, these students are always going to get it. I'll just do these 3 or whatever.
Now, the timer, do you know if the timer always shows up, or is there a way to not see that the students complain vehemently that this clock is in the corner ticking down?
Oh, interesting.
And they seem to not like it, so
I
just tell
don't.
them on their own to stop it.
Right. I don't know of one, but I'll research that.
Okay.
I don't know of one off the top of my head.
And then this is a general question.
Uh-huh.
I haven't been able to find the ability to have it open a window, a different window. So
To have the quiz open up in a different window?
it just opens up in this one.
Right. I know how to do that for things other than quizzes.
Okay.
But I don't know off the top of my hand how to do this.
It used to be a really standard, easy thing to
Right.
open up resources also.
Well, that's another one to look up. Yes. So the things that you can do, stay on page. The things that you can do with the overrides. Let's cancel whatever I was doing here. The things that you can do with both group and user overrides are, oops, that's not what I want to do, sorry. The universal symbol. So you can set up passwords, different passwords for different individuals if you want, different passwords for different groups. You can change when the quiz opens and closes. You can change the time limit, and you can change how many attempts they get. So you can give some people more attempts than others, I guess, if you want.
And if you put some students in a group, say because you know that these 4 students need to have an extra 20 minutes, will they know that they're in a separate group? Will that show up on their...
That's a good question.
Yeah, that was a concern I had about...
Let me find out. I think by default the groups do show up, but there should be a setting where you can hide group membership. For those of you who have never made quizzes, the way it sort of works in Moodle is you have a bank of questions, okay, and you can either add questions into your bank separately or you can do it while you're making the quizzes. But that bank is something that you draw on then to use the quizzes. So you could have a question bank that you move over from year to year to year that you then, take a new quiz each time and sort of repopulate it with those questions. And the questions can be organized in categories, which gets important both for organization and then also for randomization, which is I'll show you guys how to do something. So does everybody, it's really funny when I was doing this and calling it mastery-based quizzes, what did you guys think I meant? Because the terminology gets kind of weird here.
Oh, the big test.
Yeah. This is the participatory part of our workshop.
A quiz that you can take over and over again. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So it's basically a form of formative assessment, which a formative assessment is just you take it and it's low stakes and you get feedback and you learn. Ideally, you could take the quiz and like each question get feedback on it and try it again, right? Mastery-based sort of ups the ante by saying, okay, you can take it many, many times, and each time you take it, something is different, or you're getting more out of it, okay? It's really easy to do formative assessment in Moodle. You can just make things low stakes, and I have some kinds of sort of settings for that down here at the bottom. It used to be that the only way you could do formative assessment in Moodle was to have a quiz that students took the whole quiz multiple times. So they would take the quiz, get feedback, take the quiz again, get feedback, take the quiz again, get feedback. Now, Moodle has some things called question behaviors, up here under Edit Settings, which you have a couple of different options now. That old option is deferred feedback. Okay, that means you get your feedback at the end, right? You take all the questions. Immediate feedback is you take a question, you submit it, you get immediate feedback, you move on to the next one, but you can't alter your answer. Okay, these two things with CBM, very interesting. CBM is the student is asked not only to answer the question, but also to say how confident they are of their answer. And the grading, if you're grading this, is adjusted. So if you say, if you're right, but you say, well, I really guessed, right, then you get less points for being right. If you say if you're wrong, and you say, I'm really confident of this, then you get even more less points than you would, right? So it sort of adjusts to try and get students to think about assessing sort of their understanding themselves. And there's a whole literature behind this, and I've got, I think, links to that if you want to look into it. There is interactive with multiple tries, so that means you try it, you get some feedback on your response, you get to change your answer if you want. Okay? But once you're right, you move on to the next question. These two adaptive modes, you get to try it, check your answer, change your answer, multiple times, even if it's right, which I don't know why you would do, but, and then adaptive mode, no penalties, no, you're not docked every time you get a wrong answer. Okay, so I've got some examples so you guys can see what these look like for students. Let's go back here. So this mineralogy quiz demo I did, this is an example of sort of how you might do a quiz in old Moodle. This is one that Selby Call does, and she'll have the students, and so they go through and practice these things. They can do it as many times as you want, and if you get a question, Moodle tells you, and you can try it again. So one thing to point out, these nice instructions that Selby has, I highly recommend that. It really makes it, because some of your students will come in and never have done this before in Moodle. Some will have done it before. And you'll notice as the quizzes go on, she keeps saying same old instructions. But if ever she wanted to move these around, having the instructions in every single one of them. This is in the description, when you do like name of the quiz and then the description field. So that shows up as soon as someone clicks on the field. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So if you look at the quiz, and you can actually take it if you want. This should be an image. They didn't come over very well when I brought them over. But essentially there would be an image, and it would say, name the reddish mineral. And there's probably an arrow in the image that's pointing to what you want to name. You type it in here. She's got it. This is a short answer question, so she's got it set up so that it recognizes the right answer, and probably, she's checked the case does not matter box, but you've got to spell it right. You can also set up, if you know like something is commonly misspelled, you can set up the common misspelling and say right, but it's actually spelled this way or something like that, if you start noticing that. Here's where she's saying, consciously or unconsciously, we identify materials in a few ways. Tell me which one you're looking at, or tell me which one you thought, why you did this. And so you'll see she's warning them that you get a check mark just by answering anything in that field. It just means you've done it. It doesn't mean that it's right. Okay. But she used the criteria then when she went back over things to say, let's say everybody's getting this particular mineral misidentified, and she's noticing a commonality, like a common sort of misperception about what that should look like. Or, yes, people are saying black. I can't think of the words for it fractures or whatever. But that's actually, yes, this mineral is that, but that's not enough to be able to distinguish what it is. So that's why she added those. It's kind of a metacognitive thing, and it was for them to sort of think about, why am I saying this, but then also for her when she's kind of going over these in class to help people identify misperceptions. Okay, so have you guys taken some? I'll show you the results. So you get this sort of overall, you can drill down into different questions. Oops.
These are things only the faculty members?
Right, only the faculty member can see. Yeah, here's one where somebody typed queer. Now, the nice thing about this, too, is that you can, if someone answers multiple times, the example I usually show is one where, the students had like 10 or 12 minerals to choose from, and you can see the student got it right, but only after entering 12 of those minerals, right? So one thing you can do is sort of see, okay, was someone guessing? Were they not guessing? What's going on here? And then depending on whether it's one person doing this, consistently guessing, then you've got one kind of thing you might want to intervene with. But if it's everybody screwing up a particular question, then you have a sort of different kind of thing that you would want to intervene with. Okay. So let me show you now. This is a quiz. This next one is a quiz, immediate feedback with CBM. So this is the one where you say not only what you think is right, but how confident you are. So why don't you take that one to get a sense of what it looks like for students. And I'll show you what the feedback looks like.
So, since we're seeing the student view, I'm trying to, since I've submitted this mineralogy quiz, see the answers. And it's not really letting me see the answers. Is that just how it's set up?
Yeah, let me see.
I was just curious what it looks like from the student's perspective.
Right. And the answer is you control that. I don't know how this particular one was set up.
So that wasn't okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, this is set up, if you can see, these are the settings on that quiz, Jen. It's set up to give you feedback while you're doing it, but not later.
Okay.
So you could have changed that. You could have kept these settings going forward.
So you give me the answer while I was doing it.
Correct. Right. Right. And the nice thing about these question behavior settings is they automatically set those review options settings for the given condition. So if you say interactive, then it automatically sets all those different when does students see what, the way that you would want them for that kind of thing. Okay, let's go back. Whoops, results. All right.
What is the name of that student
I interpreted it totally narcissistically, that question. What is my name? Mark. And then they told me I was wrong. I was very confused.
Yeah, it was really a psychological test. So this is what I see when I look on an individual result for this quiz. So this is Peter's, right? These are his answers, and then you notice there's always this make, comment, or override mark. So if you are going through these and you notice that, oh, people, misspelled something by one, and I don't want to, you can always say, okay, yes, but not quite, not specific enough, let's say. So I could decide to, I could decide to give Peter, negative 0.1 or something like that, So he gets, I can adjust if you want. If you're using these as practice quizzes and you're setting them up so that they're low stakes, there's probably not really a need to do that all that much.
So I'm thinking about using this in a class that'll have a lot of students. I could see it'd be lovely in a small class to go through each kid.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think,
But there are summary results where you get a sense of what areas a bunch of people are
Exactly.
are struggling with.
Exactly.
And then if a student comes into your office, if you wanted to, you could
Exactly. Yeah. And compared to other things that I've seen, the summary results, let's see. There's some new summary results that I haven't played around with. I think, for example, this report lets you change how this looks so that it's easier to deal with. But I do find the summary results a bit clunky, to be honest.
Do the students see any summary results?
I think you
You can decide. Yeah.
Oh, that's one of the.
Oh, statistics. Maybe that's what it is. Yeah. So you can see overall statistics for the entire quiz. I think you can see statistics by, now since I have 2 questions and not very many people taking it, these aren't very informative statistics, but nonetheless. And then Moodle actually has built in these discrimination index, discriminative efficiency, these sorts of things. It's basically, and there's documentation on the site about it. It's a way of typically a question. You want to see if those who tend to get questions wrong are getting it wrong more often than those who tend to get questions right. That's essentially what it's calculating. And so it's a way to, if you're doing lots and lots of questions, you can kind of go through and say, oh, this one looks like a dud, right? And get rid of it or something, if you wanted to.
How in the new Moodle can you share quizzes? How would I get this quiz from you to use in my class?
Aha.
I'm so interested.
Okay, let me get myself back to a page that, there we go. The answer, yes.
Before you go there, this discrimination index, it seems to me like if you're wanting to get a range of scores, then you want high discrimination. But if you're trying to achieve mastery across the whole class, then you might actually hope for low discrimination.
Correct,
Right?
correct, yeah, exactly. Okay. Sharing. Actually very easy now. All I would do is make you a teacher in this course. Teachers in any course have access to something called the sharing cart. So the sharing cart, right here, it's activated. If it wasn't, you'd see it in the list of things that you could add. Your students will never see it in the list of blocks that they can add.
So for Mark to share something with me, he'd have to make me a teacher in this class long enough for me to share it.
Exactly. And then once you've got the sharing cart block active in a class, you'll see these copy to sharing cart links. You just click on that. It goes to your sharing cart. And then you click on this, and it puts it the last one. And then you'll see these copy to course links. So what you do is go to the course you want it in and create, open the sharing cart, make it visible, and then add these in. And I know, Helen, if you're using a textbook that has lots of canned questions in it, Helen did this for Josh Shapiro, I think, pulled in all of those questions into an organization rather than a course, so that that organization lives forever, and he can just do the sharing cart from it to new courses from then on. So one thing to think about is if you want to sort of set up a library or something, that's one way to do it. And as long as we don't have a major shift in versions where we have to switch servers, we won't ever have to, download them and upload them again.
Oh, so we don't have like a sandbox or anything?
I was wondering about that. I meant to ask Helen yesterday, because we had sandboxes before. Let's see. I don't think we... Correct. Correct.
The question made for that course only. It's not like a separate course.
You can always download import,
Yeah.
export, import into any class.
So, I used that sharing feature a lot last year because I had 4 classes that were the same, just different sections. And something that I noticed sometimes is if I had an image associated with the
Yes.
question, that would not share.
Yes. Sometimes those images move over funky. And I think it had something to do with the way the file sharing used to work in a certain way, and then it worked in another way. So I don't know if we're going to see those problems anymore. I definitely still see it when I'm moving from old Moodle to new Moodle. I'm hoping new Moodle to new Moodle to new Moodle that won't. But yeah, has been a known issue. And we haven't quite figured out the pattern too, because it's like we thought it was right. We thought it was, it's because the image is here and not here, but then we did one where the image was there and it still did it. So, yeah, that's kind of a annoying feature or bug. But hopefully we'll figure out exactly what that is, and then we can tell people, don't do this eventually. So I know folks who share things by doing this sort of sharing cart. Another way might be to set up an organization course for, say, psychology instructors, where you have a shared question bank that you can then put into all of your classes, you know, as you're teaching it, or something like that. So, question bank. You can also import-export questions from your question bank. And this includes importing from something other than Moodle. So like your, if you've got a textbook, if you've got something else, and we can help you with this because it's not always obvious how the things work and things like that, but it's generally, there's a way to do it. It's just you have to kind of tweak it a bit. So if you know of, I know the Journal of Chemical Education, I think, had a bunch of like question banks shared, you know, that people could do. So this is a way you can export your question bank and share it with a colleague who's not at Bryn Mawr. Similarly, if someone's willing to share their question bank with you, this is how you would get it in, import and export. I mentioned questions had categories. When you start doing a lot of this becomes really important because if you're going to move things from space to space, it gets harder to, you know, you've got this giant bank of 3,000 questions, right? And you might not remember what is what. So thinking sort of strategically about how you name your categories so you can come back to them pretty easily.
How do you put questions in categories?
Yes, yes. And you can move them around and you can copy them between categories. So one question could be in multiple categories. Categories become important when you're doing randomization. But real quick, before we get there, why don't you guys try this next one, which is an interactive quiz. And so you'll see how that is. So for each, when you're doing this interactive mode and adaptive mode, it takes sort of the penalties and the number of tries and all of those settings from the questions themselves. If you're bringing old questions over, the questions might not have had that added into them, so you might have to go and do that. There's this new sort of category of settings for questions called multiple tries. There's a penalty. This determines what's wrong, right? You can put in hints. But I don't see why it's not letting you retake this. That is odd.
You have it set for 1 attempt.
Yeah.
Where's that? Well, this means one answer, so only one answer is correct.
Yeah, but it came up. There was a warning that you only had 1 attempt.
Oh,
Right, so it seems like it's a meta.
Yeah.
Multiple attempts.
gotcha. Let's see. Edit settings for the quiz. Question behavior. Okay, that's set to interactive. See if there's anything there. No. Review options. Go.
You should be able to try it again without taking another attempt if you put it in.
Ah, that's because I had this set too.
Yeah.
Attempts allowed. So now 3, you should have 3 options. Hang on and let me save this and reset the quiz. Okay. And I think I can delete all your responses. Let's results. Grades?
Yeah, can't you check them all, and then it'll say,
Yeah. I don't see the little check button for everything though.
well, you can check them all.
Yeah. Usually there's an overall check, yeah, somewhere, but let's see.
There you go, delete selected attempts. So select all, delete.
Oh, there we go. Haha. Now try it again. Well, that's what I was going to say. One thing that's nice now is there's this Moodle Docs for this page link. It takes you to the Moodle Docs for the version that we have. Okay.
Where did you find that link? Sorry.
At the bottom of any page where you're editing, there'll be a Moodle Docs for this page. And it'll take you straight to Moodle Docs. If you want to have the Moodle Docs, unfortunately the default is to go to in the same window. It's probably worth it to right-click or control-click and open in a new tab.
And what version do we have?
We have version 2.5. And you can tell it will say you're currently viewing documentation for Moodle 2.5. Okay, so if ever you forget, that's a quick way to find out which version. There's also this adaptive. Here's the adaptive quiz setting. Let me make sure. Yeah, attempts 2. Oh, that's weird. Hang on. Let me change this to. I forgot to give it numbers of attempts. Where was that grade? Yes, I think you're right. One thing too, Moodle uses attempts in their docs and somewhat consistently in the interface to be taking the quiz and tries for taking the question. I've noticed. Oh, I see. So you can either say see grades, which is an overview of points people got, or responses, which is an overview of responses people made, or statistics, which is, it looks like the question by question information, which is not so useful, I think. But facility index responses. So it's a little weird in this one that you can change correct answers to be wrong, but
Yes.
I can't imagine a student would do that willingly. And if they told you that you did that, you could go back and look and see what their different submissions were for that question and override the grade.
So, sorry, was this one,
This is adaptive.
and the adaptive one, if you didn't get it right the first time, you got your points? Is that right? Or
No,
was it
it's a penalty. It depends on
What?
penalty.
You can do adaptive no penalty or adaptive penalty. I think this one was
What's adaptive?
Adaptive is that you get the little check and you check your answer and then you enter it again. So adaptive mode, the normal one, there's a small penalty for the number of times that you do it if, when the question was set up, the question had a penalty in it. So I think by default, the questions have a certain penalty amount. So here, the default point for each question is typically 1. And then there'll be, down here under multiple tries, a default penalty for the incorrect try. It used to be 10%. I've noticed in some of the ones that I've created now, it's 0.33333%. And I don't know if that's because I'm creating different types of questions or if it's because they've they've adjusted that, but. Oh, this is an example. So you guys noticed this was a short answer question, right? A short answer, and notice that the images came over this time. So I don't know why, but again, to be researched. Here's where you set whether case is important in your answer. Okay, so you set the sort of question name, determine whether this is correct. So here is answer 1. This is 100%. I also made it so that if you typed it all together, that was 100%. I'm fine with that. Remember, case doesn't matter. Here, I decided to set up a cold miser. Okay, well, that was close, because the other one's heat miser, which I always thought was meister as a kid, but I was wrong. So if you do know that there are some common answers, you can actually type them in here and say, many people get this confused, but actually it's this, or something like that. So you can give feedback, and this gets sort of into feedback. You can give feedback on the question generally. You can give feedback on each answer. So if you had multiple choice answers, you could give different feedback for each one, beyond just the right, wrong, which is what Moodle already automatically puts in. And Moodle does the automatic right, wrong based on the grade that you give it. So something is right if it's 100%. You've marked it as this is 100%. Something's partially correct if you mark it as partially. If I marked this as 0, then that would be wrong, fully wrong. Okay. You can also set up hints for each individual question. That takes a lot of time. So one thing you might want to do, sort of thinking about, time management and stuff like that, is build the quizzes first and then go back and, make the feedback more robust as you discover what it is people tend to get wrong or stuff like that. Another thing that I've seen faculty do, if they want to do these kinds of things with more open-ended questions, you can set up for the open-ended questions using the feedback. You can say a sort of sample answer, your answer, and it'll say your answer, and then it'll show sort of like the feedback could be, here's a common way of writing this, or, your answer should have included things like X, Y, and Z, right? Another thing I've seen people do is just go to that, where was it, results, responses, right, and kind of talk to students about what the common responses were or something like that for a particular question. Which I think if you do this, there's a way to show, I'm not going to be able to do it now. There is a way to show responses for a particular question for all individuals so that it's anonymous, that you could then take a snapshot of or something like that so you can pull it up in class. Without having to do it. I wouldn't try to pull it up on Moodle in class just because it's like you never remember how each time. But
so is there any real reason for this type, the adaptive quiz, to do multiple attempts?
The multiple attempts, I think, sets how many times you can try, but I might be wrong about that.
Because I guess especially if it's multiple choice or
yeah,
not,
exactly.
You just keep on typing and checking.
Exactly,
But then
exactly.
every time you type and check and it's wrong, it's 10% according to
Right, right, yeah.
Then so after 10 tries.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And-
you said they could do it.
And one thing I would suggest too is I think like the way Selby handled that, and I don't know if she was using Moodle Gradebook normally, but she set the point value. You set so Moodle automatically, as you add questions to a quiz, sort of, well, let me show you, tallies up how many points are possible for that quiz. Okay, so this question, each quiz is worth 1. The total of marks, British people were doing this, is 4, right? But I've given it a grade of 10 points. And Moodle will automatically make the calculations. I could set this to 1, right, if I wanted to. That kind of thing. And I will say, normally the sort of advice is timing is something that's used commonly for summative assessments to try and prevent cheating, to like, you've only got 10 minutes. It's going to be hard for you to open other windows and stuff like that. Typically people kind of discourage it for these sorts of practice assessments. But if you do want the students to practice in one sitting, because one of the things that they can do is take a few questions, go off and do something else, take a few more questions. You could set it to something less than 24 hours. You know what I'm saying? Like you might think about setting it to 30 minutes or an hour, way longer than they would need, but not, and just tell them, look, I don't want you to, do this in multiple settings. Because I do know students who do that, and I'm not sure that they're getting quite the benefit of the practice. There's also, and this kind of brings us to the other thing. So if you're ideally, if you're doing these practice mastery-based quizzes, the students would be able to practice until they got a certain type of question right a couple of times, and they knew they had it right, which means that you have a giant test bank of questions. Moodle does have randomization options. So this is a randomized quiz. You guys can take it, but I'll just show you how it's set up. So essentially, there's two ways to do randomization. If you're doing questions that require calculation of certain types, you can set up a question like this, where you put in variables, and then the answer that you spell out for Moodle is a formula, and then you generate a data set of parameters, essentially sets of wildcards that it will fill in. And so that's one way to, for, types of calculated questions. And there's documentation on this in terms of like what formulas it will work with. It's pretty robust. There are a lot of folks who are very into math who are concerned about Moodle and try to work with it. So for mathematics, I know when I was working with some folks in chemistry, doing chemical formulas was not quite what it was set up to do, so that was a little different. There we were just taking pictures of things. It does read LaTeX, yeah. Well, a modified version of LaTeX, yeah.
Getting a height of H.
You're getting a height of H? Let's see. Uh-oh.
Yeah, height of H meters.
So 2.5H would not be the right answer.
Yes, maybe I didn't save them. Let's see. Wildcard values. Update the wildcard values. All right, let me try that again. Generate, not one new set. Generate 30. I might not have saved this. Okay, now see what happens. If you get to do this twice. I think you do. The other thing is it can also do that for multiple choice. You can set up so that each answer is, a formula for a common right way to do something, a formula for a wrong way to do something, a formula for another wrong way to do something.
Yeah, no, it.
Still the same.
Oh, well, I'll have to figure it out. The other way to do randomization, for those of you who are not doing formulas, is this kind of random question from a category. So when you add a question, you have the option of adding a particular question from your bank or a type of question. I can't edit this because people have taken it. Or you can add a random question. And essentially a random question says, and this is where the categories become important, you tell it which category to take from, and it will take one of those from that category. So if the student, if you choose, let's say you've got a category with 10 questions, then theoretically the student could take it 10 times and see a different question each time. Now, obviously it's random, so that might not happen. But so I wanted to show you possibilities. I don't think you want to jump in and start, creating randomized quizzes immediately. Probably the easiest thing to do is start putting in some quizzes that are just simple, go through it, take it 3 times, it's got 10 questions. And then as you sort of build up a bank, start experimenting with some of these things, because it really is a lot of work. The other thing is, if you want to get complicated, I would definitely say you want to get help. Right? It's just a lot. And the really great thing about Moodle is everything has these settings that allow you to do very interesting things. The problem with Moodle is that everything has these settings, and they all interact in ways that are hard to predict, right? So, this might work great, and then you put your students into groups, and for some reason, yeah. So that's why things get weird. And one thing that the research sort of shows is, like you said, just being prompted to think about something helps you retain it. So, any kind of quiz you put in there is going to help, probably. Maybe if it's a really bad quiz, it wouldn't, right? Getting feedback on that is another level, because it tells you, even if it's just right and wrong, for students, the next step up is getting feedback that tells me why it's right or wrong, because I might be guessing, right? So, you're always doing something value added. You could kind of think of it in that way. Another, in the spacing over time, that was something that students commented on, that, well, it forced me to keep up with the reading, or it forced me to look at whatever, and everyone tends to cram preparation until the last minute, right? I did for this thing. So I think forcing people to the advice I got when I started teaching was, you have to do something that keeps you on their radar every week. Otherwise they'll focus on what's immediate and then come to you, come to your class later. And so this is a way of doing that. So we've got lots of extra time. If you want, we can sit around and help you do something.
By appointment only.